AYANEO is venturing deeper into the world of Android gaming with the Pocket Air. But where does this device fit in a world where the Steam Deck has become the go-to device of choice for many emulation enthusiasts? Can the Pocket Air succeed where other big-name companies have failed? Let's find out. If you spend any time in the world of retro handhelds, you'll know comfort is one of the main problems. With the smaller handhelds like the Retroid Pocket, they're pocket-sized, but they normally suffer from trying to cram everything into a small area. On the opposite end of the spectrum, you've got the Steam Deck, a device I love, but every time I pick it up, I feel like it's comically oversized. It is, let's face it. When I first lifted the AYANEO Pocket Air out of the box, I knew it wasn't going to be an extreme. It's not a small device, but it isn't comically oversized either. It's in the same realm as the Nintendo Switch Lite. I don't want to sound like Goldilocks here, but the size is just right. It's super lightweight at 380 grams, and the screen is the perfect size of 5.5 inches. It's big enough that I don't need to squint, but not so big that the device feels like the top half of a laptop. What surprised me most is how well AYANEO has implemented the layout. One of the biggest gripes with retro handhelds is how buttons are often thrown onto the device without any care whatsoever. If you look at budget devices like the RG350 from Anbernic and the RG351 for that matter, the trigger layout just exists. The buttons are there because they have to be, rather than because they've been carefully planned for. Let me give you an example of what I mean. When you first hold the AYANEO Pocket Air, your index fingers instinctively land on the upper section of the triggers due to their slightly larger size. These triggers have clearly been designed with comfort in mind, and it shows. By curving the triggers upwards, not only does it feel more natural, the way it slopes leads naturally to the bumper buttons in front of it. The Steam Deck has a similar setup, albeit sloping in the opposite direction. Out of the two, I'd say I prefer the AYANEO. It's smoother and feels more natural to the touch. What's interesting to me is the extra large triggers will be the first part of the device to hit a surface when you lay it down. And AYANEO has made the main grips on the sides of the device level with the triggers so the device doesn't sit at a weird angle when it's flat. Normally I don't highlight something as simple as this because, it's kind of obvious, isn't it? But I can't help but be impressed with AYANEO's craftsmanship here. They've thought through everything and have devised a device that works. This logic extends to other areas, namely the deceptively good D-pad. I'm someone who plays a lot of Street Fighter 2, Mortal Kombat, Marvel vs. Capcom, the run-of-the-mill retro fighting games. So I need a good D-pad, otherwise the whole thing just doesn't work. As much as I was impressed with the Pimax Portal, I'm not a fan of its D-pad setup at all. Trying to hit quarter inputs like a Hadouken on that D-pad, it just isn't good. The D-pad's not even interconnected, which just makes it even more of a nightmare. Okay, onto the sticks. If you've read any of my handheld reviews before, you'll know I'm not a fan of convex thumbsticks. It doesn't matter if it's the AYANEO Pocket Air or the Nintendo Switch. Convex sticks aren't good for most games. That's just how it is. For racing games, sure. Having that rounded top makes it more realistic and feel more like a driving sim. But for shooters, roleplay games, and most sports titles for that matter, concave sticks makes more sense. With concave sticks, think of the PS4 and the Xbox controllers. It's that kind of stick, the one where your thumb kind of goes into it a little bit. The upside of using these types of sticks is you have more control over directional inputs because there's a space to jam your finger into, meaning you get more control over where the sticks can be pushed. The AYANEO Pocket Air doesn't use these type of thumbsticks. It's similar to the Nintendo Switch again in that respect. Now, this isn't a deal breaker for me. Most handhelds these days use convex sticks. It's annoying, but it's something you can live with. I would argue that a switch to a concave thumbstick would be a smart improvement, but this seems to be the way it is at the moment. What I will say while we're talking about the sticks is AYANEO has gone with Hall sensor tech for both the sticks and the triggers. That, to me, is a smart move. Most will appreciate as it lowers the chance of stick drift to as close to zero as you can get. Okay, now for the good stuff. Emulation on the AYANEO Pocket Air is solid across the board thanks to the MediaTek Dimensity 1200 processor. This processor is in a similar ballpark to the Qualcomm Snapdragon XR2 found in the Pimax Portal, although I should point out that AYANEO Pocket Air isn't being sold as a VR-ready device. Important distinction. What does that look like in action? The old retro stuff like SNES and Genesis is going to work without any effort whatsoever. Just grab RetroArch, switch the USB mode to file transfer, and transfer your ROMs over via a PC. It's simple stuff, really. The AYANEO Pocket Air also makes quick work of the more advanced systems like Dreamcast and N64. Here it's 60 frames per second heaven, with everything I threw at the device working without any issues whatsoever. Moving on to the GameCube era, that's where things get a little weird. GameCube runs without any problems, that's fine, as does PS2 for the most part. I say for the most part because during my testing, the Pocket Air has a bizarre issue with the original God of War. It works, but you can get random slowdown at the start. And what's interesting is I didn't have this problem on the Pimax Portal, so I'm leaning toward it being something to do with the Pocket Air itself, maybe? The good news is the problem should be easy enough to fix, and every other PS2 game I tried worked without any problems. That's good. For all of the previously mentioned systems, I was able to upscale the resolution to either 720p or 1080p, complete with widescreen patches enabled, and the gameplay remains smooth and consistent. Good stuff. As you may know, on Android, PS3, Xbox 360 and Wii U emulation isn't possible, for the simple fact there isn't an emulator for it. I was, however, able to get Switch games running on the device with a modicum of success. For obvious reasons, I won't be showing any of the footage. If you're wondering why, you can probably guess. Before I get into it, I need to stress though, you shouldn't buy an AYANEO Pocket Air if you're looking to play Switch games. The Switch Lite is cheaper than the Pocket Air, so there's very little reason to pick it up if that's what you want to play. So, how was it? New Super Mario Bros. Deluxe was able to run at a solid 60 frames per second, which is shocking, as did Cuphead, Proteus and other lightweight games using the early access version of Yuzu. I wasn't able to get Pokemon Legends Arceus or Super Mario Odyssey to hit a decent frame rate, but as I say, the fact it works on the Pocket Air is a huge achievement if you ask me. So, let's talk Android. The AYANEO Pocket Air and Pimax Portal share more than just the same Android-based operating system. The Pimax Portal uses Android 11, while the AYANEO Pocket Air uses Android 12. When you load either of the consoles up, you'll be greeted with a Nintendo Switch-style layout. Where things differ between the two devices is how you access other apps within Android. Whereas the Pimax Portal plonks all the apps into the far right of the main homepage, the Pocket Air places the same apps directly below the home screen. This does mean the Pocket Air looks slightly more cluttered, but it's not enough to be a problem. Let's be real. Both devices also feature a quick access style menu. Although the big difference between the two, the Pimax Portal keeps things simple with a quick access menu that's essentially just the Android swipe down bar. But on the Pocket Air, AYANEO has given us a bunch of different widgets like being able to screenshot or map virtual buttons. And more importantly, direct access to performance modes. Here you can set the fan speed and how much juice the Pocket Air will pull when playing different games. For emulators, you absolutely want to enable game mode, trust me. You can also enable Sound Tap Magic, the AYANEO answer to vibration feedback in games that didn't support them in the past. But like the AYANEO game library, I wasn't able to get that working. Presumably these options aren't quite ready for public consumption just yet, so that's fine. Overall, I find the Android 12 operating system easy to understand and easy to navigate. I've been using Android phones for years, as you probably know, so switching over to a more console-like version of Android wasn't that difficult. I'd imagine if you've ever used an Android or Apple device before, chances are you'll understand the Pocket Air operating system just as quickly. It's nothing to worry about. AYANEO set out to create a high-end Android device that doesn't cost a bomb. The Pocket Air is, essentially, AYANEO's version of the AYAN Odin, albeit with a slightly stronger engine. Is the AYANEO Pocket Air worth the $300 asking price? I'd have to say yes. The form factor is exquisite, the screen is crystal clear, and the sheer breadth of what it can play in terms of emulation and Android gaming is phenomenal. Not just that, but if there's one example of a retro handheld that does the design right, it's the AYANEO Pocket Air. Sure, there are some minor issues, like how I prefer concave thumbsticks to convex ones, or how the speakers are slightly underwhelming compared with pricier options like the Steam Deck or ROG Ally. Given we've seen a host of quick cash grabs that don't justify the price, looking at you Logitech G Cloud and Razer Edge, it's good to see there's more companies out there who care about delivering a high quality product. The AYANEO Pocket Air isn't perfect, but if you want the best Android device on the market with a ton of power, and a luscious battery life that goes on for hours without needing to be plugged in, you will not go wrong with the Pocket Air. Thanks for watching.